Welcome to the Group Dentistry Now show, the voice of the DSO industry. Kim Larson and Bill Newman talk to industry leaders about their challenges, successes, and the future of group dentistry. Visit groupdentistrynow.com for more DSO analysis, news, and events. Looking for a job or have a job to fill? Visit joindso.com. We hope you enjoy today's show.
Welcome, everyone, to the Group Dentistry Now show. I'm Bill Newman, and as always, I'd like to thank the audience for being a part of the show, listening in, or maybe you're watching us on YouTube. Without the support from our audience, we wouldn't have great guests like the next two guests we have on the show today. We have Lanita Gautier. She is the Key Account Manager for Ivoclar, and we have Dr. David Rice. He is the founder of igniteDDS and also the chief editor of DentistryIQ. So thank you both for being here today.
Thanks, Bill, for having us.
And I've known Lanita for a while, and I've known Dr. Rice for longer than I've known Lanita. So I've known Dr. Rice for, it has to be over a decade now.
It's been a bit.
It has. So it's great to have you on our podcast and get a chance to find out what you're up to and what you do, how you work in partnership with Ivoclar.
Awesome.
So Lanita, why don't we start with you a little bit about your background? I know you have a hygiene background. You've been in the industry a while, and you've been in this key account manager role for a little while with Ivoclar. So maybe a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I've been in dentistry 30 years. Don't do the math. I started out as a dental hygienist and actually worked in a DSO and moved into a leadership role. I dabbled in a couple of different things as a CETA board examiner, the president of my local hygiene association, and began lecturing and delivering CE courses. And someone came up to me and said, "You would be great in sales." I said, "Absolutely not. I'm an educator, not a salesperson." So with that, I took the challenge to move into sales and have worked on the restorative side for about 15 years. With Ivoclar for the past year, we've curated a DSO team, and I'm really excited to be here.
Great. Thanks, Lanita. And Dr. Rice, founder of igniteDDS. There might be some people in the audience that don't know about Ignite, so maybe take a couple of minutes to talk about what igniteDDS does, and then a little bit about your background.
Sure. So igniteDDS is a community of dentists, really. We work and coach with multiple groups a year. We also work with multiple private practices a year, like single locations. I'm an educator at heart, and we've got a little over 31,000 dentists that we network with pretty much every day of the week. Outside of Ignite, dentist Lanita, I'm going to see your 30 years and meet you right there. I'm 30 years in. I can't believe where the time has gone, but I love the practice. I love our patients. I love the transitions we made over the years, going from one location and one dentist to multiple docs and multiple locations, and pulling in that educational piece. It's great to be here with both of you.
Great. Let's get into the Q&A portion here. Lanita, I'll start off with you. So you're working with these DSOs and not just DSOs, right? You work with emerging groups as well. So when you work with them, what are you hearing as like big challenges, like headaches that they're dealing with right now?
Great question. And interesting enough, it's not necessarily related to, what we do in sales, right? But attracting and retaining talent, I think, is the number one headache that most DSOs are suffering from right now. And post-COVID, we all know the story. I think everyone's in the same boat. But when you really take a deeper dive and you look at, why is that? I think there's two different, camps to look at. One is maybe the tangible things, like, are you integrating AI? What is the technology like in your group practice? Are you investing in that? Are your clinicians excited to come to work because you have CAD/CAM dentistry, or you're looking at 3D printing and things like that? The second piece, I believe, is more maybe Dr. Rice's wheelhouse is something more intangible, like the culture. Are your clinicians excited to come to work? Are there interesting things? Do they feel a part of the organization? And maybe it's not, a big group where they feel like they're, little fish in a big sea, but it's the individual practice. The leaders in each practice have the ability to control that, even if they're part of a bigger organization. So I think, really going back to your question, to alleviate some of those headaches, looking at some of the tangible and intangible things that you have control over in your group practice really will make a difference in retaining and keeping some of that talent that's out there.
So, Dr. Rice, what do you see as far as challenges? You're working with these group practices, you're working with individual docs. What do you run into?
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing that you just shared, Lanita. The biggest problem in all of dentistry today, and it's not just us, right? But it's our home, so it's where our focus is. It's people, and we're having trouble retaining team members. Especially on the DSO side, we're having trouble retaining associates. And I think that's not necessarily the model, but the scale. So the larger we get, the more difficult it is for us to get that top talent, keep that top talent happy in a world where people are kind of shifting and grooving. And it's fascinating to me. We don't agree on a lot of things in dentistry, but most people are seeing the writing on the wall with hygiene right now in the next 5 years. So you're going to see a mass exodus of about 33% of assistants walking out the door. And so we're living it. It's not going to get better, until we, with great intention, address the causes of it. I think that's the biggest problem we're seeing every day.
So you're both seeing really the same things. Anything else, David, that you're seeing beyond that retention and talent challenge? And I think there's been some drive to address that. Certain DSOs are either starting their own dental assisting schools, they're investing in schools, educational platforms out there. But it still seems like it's a big challenge. It's like I think a lot of us thought that it was COVID related, but now we're 4 years past that, and we're still seeing those challenges. But anything else you're seeing? And then I guess for both of you, like what's the fix?
Sure. So what I'm seeing is the second most prevalent concern is clinical operating procedures. So I think most DSOs and, even on the emerging group side, people do a pretty darn good job on standard operating procedures. So the business side of the house is fairly standardized, but the clinical side of the house is not as standardized as everybody would like it to be. And I think maybe if we took a deeper dive into each location, as much as we maybe think it is. So it's difficult, especially with the DSOs who have grown by acquisition. Promises get made to people that we can sort of keep things the way that they are in an effort to onboard, great practices within great groups. But at some point, we have to get to a place of standardization. And it goes back to that whole scale breaks things if we don't have great people and great process lined up. So number 2 for me is really clinical operating procedures.
So standardization can be very scary, especially for clinicians. And how do you address something like that, where there's a lot of them like, hey, I like the way I do things, I don't want standardization. But to your point, I mean, that is really the way you become much more efficient, and ultimately the goal would be to provide better patient outcomes.
Sure. So I'll tell you how we do it. We actually, we start at home. We engage every dentist, every hygienist, every assistant, everybody on the admin team with what is your best life at home. And then once we really understand each member of the team, despite their role, and what motivates them, what they really want out of life, then we show them the connection between the success of the practice, the group, to their success in their personal life. And it's amazing how people have light bulbs go off when they realize, oh, so sure, we could work with 20 manufacturers or 20 labs or do it 20 different ways. But if we just shrink and find a happy place in the middle, we're a lot more productive, we're a lot more profitable. And that profitability allows me to have more time and have more money for the life that I want outside those 4 walls. I think that's the ultimate motivator for people, not so much what happens in the 4 walls.
And Lanita, on the standardization side of things, how does Ivoclar help to address that, and how do you feel that's received?
Yeah, I think when you partner with a manufacturer, there are certain things like, bonding agent, we all have it, right? But what makes one manufacturer different from another? And for us, it's packaging, especially when you speak of bonding agent or something of that sort. We have the Viva Pen that really streamlines your workflow. It speeds up your workflow in that you're not going back and forth into a DAP and dish. You have it right in your hand. And have micro dosing that is controlled and very simple. We have a power cure system that is a 3-second curing light and a whole host of material that complements that. And so I think having, systems like Dr. Rice mentioned that really alleviate some headaches, shrink your workflow so that you don't have a lot of different systems, a lot of different bonding agents, multiple cements from different manufacturers. Do they work well together? And really honing in on a strategic procedure within the office and your materials complement that. It will allow predictable and consistent outcomes.
We actually have a couple of previous podcasts with you that talk about the Viva Pen and some of your other solutions. We'll drop links in the show notes to those so people can find out about those. So Dr. Rice, on the emerging group side of things, you work with 5 emerging groups per year, which seems pretty specific. So you limit it to that number for a reason. So, why do you do that? And then talk a little bit about, how you're helping them.
Sure. So I guess what we've always found is success comes from taking deeper dives, and deeper dives require time and focus. So although I educate, with Ivoclar, actually with lots of different DSOs, that's fun. And we tip of the iceberg, many, many things, and then teams take over. My focus has to be with 5 different groups. If we go beyond that, we don't have the appropriate time to actually dive deep, get into the weeds, be physically present with those groups. I love digital formats. They're wonderful. They allow for scale on my side, but the reality is if people and process need to unite for us to be highly productive and profitable, then we need to, as a team at Ignite, be able to have feet on the street and be in the practices, see how they work together, see what's really happening as opposed to, how we dentists maybe share something's happening. And if I've been guilty myself in my practice. If somebody asked me, how well is something going? It's either going incredibly, and I think it is, or it's going incredibly, and I'm just not even really aware of what's happening in my practice. So we like to get objective firsthand eyes on things. And 5 is a nice number that our core team can commit to and really start being impactful within the first 90 days.
How long do you typically work with one of these groups?
2 years is 2 years, I would say, is the meat. The 3rd year is often kind of more on the maintenance side of things, unless said group is trying to go from 20 locations to 50 or 50 to 70 or 80, then that 3rd year may be needed. But typically for us, we focus very hard on the people side and low-hanging fruit to get very productive year 1. Year 2, we start fine-tuning, and we're very situational as we build the production side of the practice and the profitability. And year 3 is just bring it all together for people and make sure everybody's living up to the person they promised to be for their group.
So this ties in nicely because, you're doing a lot of education at igniteDDS, whether it's, in person, hands-on, or some of it you actually do digitally, like we're doing here today. So Lanita, let's talk about the importance of education. And then I'd love to get Dr. Rice's feedback on this, because when we look at especially DSOs and group practices, and I hate to say this, but a lot of products are commoditized by these DSOs. And part of it is because products continue to get more advanced and better. So it's harder to differentiate between maybe one bonding agent and another bonding agent. So a lot of it comes down to maybe the delivery of something, is it easier to use? Does it take less time? But a lot of it is the support behind it and the education. So, Lanita, talk a little bit about the educational opportunities that Ivoclar as an organization really provides for DSOs and group practices.
Absolutely. And I would agree with you wholeheartedly as a clinician. And as a clinician that actually worked in a DSO, is there are often times where decisions are made that are outside of your control, and you're handed a product and they say, here, use this. And the education is paramount when it comes to making any changes in clinical decisions on the products that you use inside of a DSO. Ivoclar really has taken a giant step and has probably one of the biggest platforms in education that I've seen with a manufacturer. Dr. Shashi Singhal heads up our education department. And we have obviously our Ivoclar Academy, which is an online platform that has webinars that are available and some recorded webinars that you can access. We have an exciting summer school program, which I think is such a great idea. And doctors, or actually students who are in dental school, have the ability to travel to New York and our corporate headquarters and spend time learning from Dr. Shashi and his team and some of the KOLs that work with us, and have a hands-on experience and become familiar with Ivoclar products before they even graduate. But specifically with the DSOs, we curate a program for each DSO to make sure that we're addressing any headaches that they may have, that we are giving information ahead of time, whether it be, through email where they can access videos and tutorials about our products, and hands-on courses with KOLs like Dr. Rice, or, CE events. We have our field team, which is, they've been, I think our average tenure is over 10 years for our field sales team, which is unheard of in this market. And the reason I feel that that's important is that they've probably heard the question that you're going to ask, or if a headache comes up and you say, hey, I need help with XYZ, they've had that call 5-10 times already over their 10 years. So they have the ability to answer those questions and really support a DSO.
Dr. Rice, talk a little bit about your involvement with Ivoclar's education.
Sure. So I'm going to say early on in my career, I was very fortunate. My practice is 10 minutes door to door to Ivoclar's US HQ. So it started off with Ivoclar and I becoming friends with their team, becoming patients. And then over the years, thankfully, they like the dentistry. And over the years, what happened was we started seeing all these opportunities to really dig deep. And like Lanita said, I love Ivoclar Academy's like hybridized model. So we can flip the classroom and we can get a lot of digital education in front of people quickly. It can be very customized to DSOs, which I love. Not everybody does that. Sometimes people just put out one lane of content. It's just one size fits all, but Ivoclar doesn't do that. And then, we get to that in-person, hands-on piece, which can live at Ivoclar when groups want to come to visit Amherst, New York. It's contrary to the snow stories, it's an amazing place to be. I highly recommend getting there. And then we've built a bunch of programs that say, hey, step one is we can come to you, make it really simple. Option two is you can come to Ivoclar. And option three is we can really dive deep together and custom build programming that serves the dentistry that's happening in your four walls every single day. So the goal being very efficient workflows that deliver, optimum results despite the DSO that you're in and how you'd like to do it.
Yeah, and I would concur about Amherst, New York, and people's perception. If you've never been there, it's a beautiful part of the country and some of the friendliest people you'll ever meet. I wouldn't maybe necessarily go in January, but but for the most part, the weather is not like you've heard, and just really nice place. And the facility itself, Ivoclar's facility, is second to none. I mean, it'd be great, the hands-on. I've been there a couple of times to experience that. So I would definitely recommend, if you get the opportunity, go out and see it, enjoy it, go check out Niagara Falls, of course, while you're out there. But really, really special part of the country. So you've kind of talked a little bit about it, Dr. Rice, but why did you decide to partner with Ivoclar? You had some of them as patients, and did you have the ability to go in there and do some hands-on before you became a partner of theirs and actually kind of get on the other side of things and help educate? How did that work?
It worked just that way. So, first, total transparency for everybody who's tuning in here. I get behind the curtain with at least a dozen manufacturers every year times the last 20 years. So I get an inside peek at what happens that maybe we don't get to see as clinicians. So what first attracted me to Ivoclar were their products and was the technology. I think what kept me coming back was the people. And to Ivoclar's detriment, they never put something in front of us as clinicians that will get us in trouble. They go tried and true, and they bring hard data to the table, and then they share it with us. And that's not true of a lot of manufacturers out there. Lots of times things get brought our way. That's the next great material, since, sliced bread, and then, 8-9 months later, that material no longer exists, or we get this nice little envelope that says, hey, please don't use this for crowns anymore. And that's a dangerous place for us to be, especially when you start talking about 20, 50, 100, 1,000 providers and learning that something gets, recalled, and we're in some big trouble. So I think I went in for the technology and the materials, and I stayed for the people because the integrity level is just unbelievable to me. And that doesn't go unnoticed, and it's extraordinarily rare in today's world.
So as we start to wrap this up, now I think you celebrated it maybe like a year and a half ago of the 100-year anniversary. So we're past 100 years at Ivoclar. Where do you see things heading, Lanita? You continue to innovate 100 years in. So what are some things we have to look forward to?
That is what we're most excited about at Ivoclar. Ivoclar has entered into a collaborative partnership, I'm sure you've heard, with SprintRay, which we could not be more excited about. And so Ivoclar brings, as everyone knows, the past 100 years has really done well on the materials side of things. We offer innovative, aesthetic workflows that really make a difference. Think back over our years ago with our partnership with Dentistry Sirona. And Emax with CIRAC. So that really has changed the way we practice dentistry today. Thinking back, that the education around that, the heavy lifting that had to be done to bring those two partnerships together really made a difference in Ivoclar. And we look forward to that with SprintRay. They are the experts in 3D printing, second to none. So this partnership with SprintRay, I would predict, will probably change dentistry in the same manner that Emax and CIRAC did.
That's great. And I know I saw something about a summer tour, right, where I think Ivoclar and SprintRay are going into different parts of the country. And so you get a chance to kind of see what the partnership actually looks like. As we wrap this up, final thoughts. We can start with you, Dr. Rice. Just anything you want to discuss about what's going on at igniteDDS, maybe some things that you've got going on there, and then maybe even on the educational front with Ivoclar, what you have going on with them.
Sure. I'd say, I'll focus more on your audience and all of us out here who are clinicians. Whether you're just getting started and you're at 5, 6, 7 locations, or you're at, several thousand locations. If we want to truly scale and find great success, we need to focus on having strong financial control. We have to have great systems control. And yet dentistry, we have to have clinical control as well. So take a look at each one of those controls in your group and pass the mirror test. Ask yourself honestly, am I on the right path where I'm greenlining things and growing and everything's working for me? Or am I the red line path and maybe I'm not quite on the path I'd like to be on, and understand that this trajectory to success isn't a straight line. So if you're green line in and you're on the right path, things are great. If you're on that red line path, you're going to be further away from where you want to be in 6 months or a year than you are today. So make sure to just self-assess, work on your team, get things calibrated, and then start elevating and moving the direction you want to go in and you know is best for you. And I couldn't tell you a better partner and people to work with than Ivoclar. It's been a great honor and a great run to work with their whole team for almost 30 years now. So I appreciate being here with you both.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rice. People want to find out more about igniteDDS, or they want to get in touch with you. How do they do so?
So the best way to get in touch with me is by my email. It's david.rice@ignitedds.com. Or you can find igniteDDS, pretty much everywhere on social media. We reach about 3.5 million folks a month. So reach out any way that's best serves you, and I'd love to chit chat.
Excellent. We'll drop the email and the website info in the show notes. And Lanita, any final thoughts? And I also want to make sure that people have your contact information. And if anybody in the audience would like to take part or find out more about Ivoclar's educational courses, how do they do so?
Yes. So ivoclar.com. There is at the top corner, you can click on the Ivoclar Academy, which will have a listing of all of our continuing education courses. My email will be in the show notes, but it's lanita.gautier@ivoclar.com. And my phone number, 828-203-3764.
Thanks, Lanita. And I'm going to just spell that for everybody. It's Lanita, LANITA.Gautier, which is GAUTIER @ivoclar.com.
Correct.
And yeah, thank you, Lanita. And thanks, Dr. Rice. Just great conversation. You talk a lot about, and I talk about this all the time, about the importance of education. And, we've got two great educators here. We have Lanita with Ivoclar, and we have Dr. Rice with igniteDDS. So this is going to be one that we're just going to make sure that we highlight education on this podcast, because everybody's going to know this is going to be the podcast to come. Mm-hmm. If you're really trying to figure out, whether it's clinical education, or it could even be, the culture of the organization too, which is a huge issue with a lot of these groups as well. But appreciate you both sharing your thoughts and your expertise. And until next time, I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Group Dentistry Now Show.
The Group Dentistry Now Show has listeners across North and South America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. If you like our show, subscribe today, and please tell your colleagues about us.